Hello, and welcome to the first installment of a series of interviews I'll be conducting on behalf of SCORAI, the Sustainable Consumption Research and Action Initiative, on this Belmont Forum funded project, co-creation of sustainable food supply chains. Today, we're going to just be talking about the project in general to sort of kick off this series of interviews over the next 3 years. We're going to be going into some depth on this project and how it develops over time. Today I'm here with Pia. I'd like you to just introduce yourself, Pia, to get started, and we'll dig into some details about what this project is and what we expect over the next 3 years. So thanks, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, Ashley. So I'm Pia Laborgne. I'm a sociologist working at the Karlsruhe Transformation Center for Sustainability and Cultural Change. We are part of KIT in Karlsruhe and ETAS. I'm working since many years on transdisciplinary research around topics of sustainable urban development, and with a focus on inclusive transformation, on participation, and in how to engage people and really involve them in sustainability transitions.
Great. Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit later on about how some of that background of yours made its way into this project and what those different approaches look like. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about, not in too much detail because it's a little bit complicated, but what is the Belmont Forum? This project is funded by the Belmont Forum. My role in this project is to sort of disseminate the research findings in a popular form of communication. But what is the Belmont Forum? How is this project structured? Let's talk a little bit about that, just to give a little bit background on what the project is.
Mm-hmm. So the Belmont Forum was established in 2009 and is a partnership of funding organizations, international science councils, and regional consortia which are committed to the advancement of transdisciplinary science. So their aim is international transdisciplinary research, which provides knowledge for understanding, mitigating, and adapting to global environmental change.
And so for this particular project, let's talk a little bit about how it came to be, because the Belmont Forum, what I understand, it's a cursory understanding of how exactly it works, but each year there's a call for proposals, and when the Belmont Forum puts out this call, then different national funding agencies choose to participate or not. So let's maybe talk a little bit about who are the teams we have involved in this project, and how it came to be, because you were the sort of core coordinator who made this happen.
So our project, which is named Co-SFSC, coordinates transdisciplinary research across 5 research hubs, how we call them, and with 6 teams in Turkey, Thailand, Taiwan, Sweden, Germany, and the US. And we came together through different networks like Future Earth, SSCP, Knowledge Action Network, then SCORAI, existing regional networks and partnerships with practice partners, for example, in the regions or between research institutions. And for example, in our case, we are part of the Upper Rhine Sustainability Cluster Working Group on Food. So that's how this Upper Rhine hub came together. Mm-hmm. And with our practice partners, we have already worked in other projects. So we are already used to cooperate with them. And yes, so it was like, in part, it was existing cooperations, but then some partners really didn't knew each other before, but are involved in the same networks, and like this we came together.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the way that this project is structured. It's a little bit different from a typical research project, because there's certain design aspects to the project that are really intentional and, in my opinion, extremely exciting. So the focus on transformation throughout the project, the transdisciplinary nature, the orientation towards communities of practice, and then the topic area is sustainable food supply chains And specifically, we're looking at the role of cooperatives within that. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the focus area and explain, basically how each of the hubs has designed their project with these different, specific design aspects.
Yeah, so we started like to draw a very rough common frame in this overall consortium, but then the partners, the national partners, went to their practice partners. They met individually and worked out what their needs, what their questions were, and then we came together and put this together, and we discussed and came to these aspects of cooperatives, cooperative businesses, and also to have a strong focus on sustainability concepts, and on governance and the supporting ecosystems of sustainable food chains.
Mm-hmm.
And we have in each hub has a specific focus, but we have we come together also in the whole project through courses structured in the same way around 4 common steps. So we start with transdisciplinary sustainability assessment, really to create system knowledge, to see how the system is now, how sustainable it is. Then transdisciplinary sustainability visioning, so creating target knowledge, and then transdisciplinary strategy building and action planning. So this is about transformation knowledge. So we have this typical 3 kinds of knowledge of transdisciplinary research: system knowledge, target knowledge, transformative knowledge. And we are also we also want to have this kind of really doing some pilots, some experiments locally with the practice partners. So really realizing something, initiating something, some change locally together.
And could you just briefly describe what defines transdisciplinary? Because I think probably some people have heard the term, and maybe sometimes it's used differently. Because I know, like, for example, in the US, sometimes transdisciplinary just simply means, a social scientist working with a natural scientist. But in this case, we're really talking about, academia working outside of academia with practice partners.
Yeah. So for us, it's really transdisciplinary means to work with, practice, and integrate different kinds of knowledge into the project from the start on. Really define the goals, the questions with practice partners, and have in each step somehow this cooperation, co-creation. And one feature I would say is also that transdisciplinary research aims at transforming something. So it's not only analysis, not only going there and looking at them, analyzing what they do or getting data or something, but really also engaging in transformation, in transforming, doing something concrete. So it's an additional aim of research.
And I love that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times research will just sort of describe the world as it is, and in some ways it can be a little bit extractive. The researcher relationship to the general public, where you're just sort of extracting data, you're not really giving anything back, or at least in theory you'll give something back, or you'll send your paper on to them, but it doesn't really end up transforming anything. But in this project, the goal is really to listen, to co-create, and this is the co-create part of the project, to co-create an understanding of the world with these practitioners, and then to actually take some steps to assess the situation as it is. How can we take a step toward more sustainable food supply chains, toward food cooperative governance, using these different technologies such as food policy councils as a model or a pilot to try to advance something with sustainability. And it's all different in each hub. And to me, it's really cool and very exciting to do research like that, and really kind of thinking about like the ethical responsibility of researchers to not just extract knowledge from the world and get their papers published for their own status, but to really make an impact on the world. So that's pretty exciting, I think.
That's true, but it's really also, it's quite a challenge, and it's really like it's not just adding some practice partner to your research, but you have really specific questions, specific methods, a specific process, and also specific aspects you have to be aware of. So I think it's really, really, yeah, it's exciting. I think it's also really useful and impactful, but it's also challenging.
Yeah, and just to be aware of that too, and in some ways you feel like you are almost like translating across languages, you know, the kind of sustainability research language and then the practice language of the partners. We later on in this series, I'll have interviews with each of the specific hubs. So it's pretty interesting to see that each one will have a sort of different context. And the goal here is to sort of learn and share notes across contexts to see what are we finding in common with our different practice partners, with our different food supply chains, and what's different, what's contrasting. We talked a little bit about this already, but the benefits of transdisciplinary research, transformational research, you know, the community of practice orientation. Is there anything you haven't yet said that you feel like is important to point out with that structure?
Yeah, I think I didn't mention yet the community of practice. I think one challenge is really not to have just the different hubs, but to really bring this together and really realize an exchange in learning. Because I think one main advantage of this project is that we have a really good opportunity to learn from each other. So what we want to do is really to set up a community of practice, a process on project level with self-assessment, with each of us has different specialities, different expertise we can share with the others, really to reflect together on what happens in the hubs, to transfer learnings. And I think for this, it's important really to create a very good frame on project level. And I think we really have to chance to realize this.
Yep. And I think I'm really excited to play a role in that too, because I think a lot of times these international projects, they theoretically are exchanging knowledge, but in practice, everybody gets sort of busy and it's really hard to keep track of what everyone else is doing in their project. So, you know, part of the goal of these interviews is to sort of keep everybody abreast of what's going on in the different hubs and to sort of take best lessons and best practices and maybe some challenges from each other and to be able to share. So I'm excited about to sort of tell that story throughout the next 3 years. What are you most looking forward to and excited about for the whole project?
On the one side, really this exchange and learning. I already learned. I really find this cooperation very inspiring to see what at different places of the world is already happening, what is transforming, what good examples, what models are there, and to learn from this. I think it's really, really exciting. And then also, I like very much also to work on here in the region, really concretely changing something, to work with practice partners, to think of how we as researchers can contribute to sustainability transformation. And this kind of, in this form of research, we have to take different roles as researchers. We cannot just stay in our observing role. And that's something I like very much.
And I would say one thing that really drew me to the project is the sort of local, the specific context focus, the sort of bioregional food system focus is so cool, because I think one of my critiques of sustainability, you know, research in general, is a lot of times it remains so abstract, so, you know, global in scope, or so, you know, basically looking at models for spreadsheets and these, you know, making recommendations based on very abstract knowledge. But in this project, it's really, each of the hubs is really quite a local focus, and you know, this sort of, you know, for your example, the Upper Rhine region, it's a very specific region, but then it has a global focus in that the localities are sort of exchanging information through through these different, communities of practice structure that we designed into the project. So that was really exciting for me. And of course the transformational aspect, and also cooperatives, I think is an interesting angle. I don't think a lot of people have really married in this sustainable food systems with the role that cooperative governance, and just different cooperative structures can play. So that's interesting. I think we're doing something I think quite unique in the focus of those aspects. What are you most worried about navigating over the next 3 years?
It's quite complex. It's a big project. We are in very different contexts, and yes, we have different languages. I mean, really different languages, but also like different disciplinary languages. We have very different level of experience with transdisciplinary research. Yeah, different focus points, and so it's really complex, and it will be a challenge to bring all this together, but I think it's a very nice challenge also.
Yeah, I agree. And it was nice. I think it's worth noting, we didn't get a chance to do this in person, but we all got to meet together in person in Germany, a representative from each of the hubs. So that was really, I think, important to get to know each other interpersonally, and I think will help a lot with navigating some of the complexity, because we've sort of built up some relationships, which I think was really a good experience.
Yes, especially as some of you even spent some like 3 weeks, about 3 weeks here in Karlsruhe.
Yep.
I think we really had a good team building phase, and we are starting now with a good basis, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think it was really nice too to see your local context and your local practice partners was really good, because I think then people can make comparisons to their own case, but they can just sort of see in your example how your practice partners are working, what their focus area is, just sort of seeing their facility and that kind of thing. We'll talk about that in a later video in more detail with Sarah and Ava, but it was really neat to just see the German example up close in person, and the Upper Rhine region, and so beautiful there. Well, Pia, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I think this series of videos is going to be great. For those out there listening, we have a series of videos on the hubs, and then I will be conducting interviews throughout the project at intervals to talk with each of the members of the hubs and find out how their assessment is going, how their transformation is going throughout the project. Ideally get the chance to talk to some community local practice partners would be great. So stay tuned. I think it will be a really interesting series of videos, and to watch this project develop over time. So this is just the first in that series of videos, and forthcoming after this one will be a video on each of the hubs: the Turkey, Taiwan, Thailand, Sweden, and Germany. And then following that, just sort of catching up videos later on in the project. So thank you, Pia, and
Thank you.
and have a good one. Thanks so much.
Bye.